I used to love going down to my grandfather's office. He had the CROSBIE company was located in the Woolworth building down on the waterfront. And our actual premises included wharves out back, and I used to go down to the wharves as a young fella. And Skipper Chess would tell Jack and Ned to take care of the little one, don't lose him now. And he'd let me run around the docks all day. I just loved being down on the wharf, and I think that was my lifelong enjoyment of the marine environment. It was just so exotic with all the vessels coming in from different places with all the different goods and, you know, the Portuguese White Fleet and all. It was just wonderful and romantic in retrospect. I was going to be a history professor, Canadian history professor. Everybody laughed at me. All my friends even laughed at me because they knew I was going into business. They didn't know where and when, but they knew I was going to do it. Anyway, I was convinced to take a year off and reflect, and in the interim, my uncle got me a job in England to train with CROSBIE Insurance, to go to a Lloyd's of London insurance broker and see whether or not I would like Lloyd's of London and the marine insurance environment. And, you know, given my proclivities to hanging around the docks, I suppose it's no surprise, but I fell in love with marine and aviation insurance. Well, most of the time these days when people ask me what was my career, I say I was a salesman, because I sold so much stuff, right? And everybody goes, well, weren't you highly trained in the subsea equipment? And I said, look, give me 2 months and I can sell anything.
He's a very infectious chap. He's an excitable, determined, thoughtful individual who has a ferocious thirst for knowledge.
I've never seen a person that can decide he wants to learn a topic, go into a room with none of his own knowledge and come out understanding what it is that other people thought about that industry or that topic. He's probably one of the best business development people that I know.
You have to remember 30 years ago, quality plans weren't in our vocabulary. We weren't competing with the world. So through his sharp eye and his thirst for knowledge, was quite prepared to do the homework necessary to be prepared to participate as well. It's not just wanting to.
He's well known around Aberdeen and in Stavanger and down in Houston because he's been chopping through all of those shows for decades. When we went and we were sort of going together, he'd always sort of say, what is your plan? Who are you seeing and when you seeing and what are you talking about? And when he went there, he had a plan as to who he wanted to see and what he wanted to achieve.
The lights were about to be turned out, and Lee was one of a handful of individuals who took it upon themselves to get to Ottawa, lobby the right people, and that was including Mike Wilson, who was a Western Canadian finance minister, Brian Mulrooney. And they sold the project to the feds. Listen, without Lee and a few other individuals, we wouldn't have an offshore.
When we started in the oil and gas business back in the late 70s, early 80s, we actually knew nothing. We didn't know how the industry worked. We didn't know what difficulties would be present. We didn't know how to make long-term profits. We really had a lot to learn, and we learned mainly by taking advice and leadership from Tier 1 and Tier 2 companies from Aberdeen and Stavanger, from the North Sea. It feels just like it did in the late 70s, early 80s, when suddenly all these drilling units arrived, all these supply boats arrived, and there was frantic periods of drilling and discoveries. I think that's happening again. I just feel it. I just think that there's going to be so much drilling over the next 3 to 5 years.
Lee is a fascinating character. I first met Lee actually 16 years ago when I started at Genesis, and Lee was then on the selection committee at Genesis, which is the committee that makes the decision as to who gets into our incubator program.
I just think volunteerism is the correct thing to do. So I've always given back to the community. I've always looked for interesting ways of doing that. And as it turned out, I got approached to join the Genesis group long before it was the entrepreneurial hotspot that it is today.
The fact that Lee has given so much time and energy and talent to the Genesis Center makes me very proud. The fact that we have someone who is internationally recognized, such as Lee, and that can make contributions to Genesis every day with his time and with his investments. Simply put, we would not be here today without the contributions of people like Lee.
Excellence is a legacy from Lee, I think. Your pursuit of excellence your belief in what you're doing and enjoying that.
Oh, I see no trouble in predicting that Act Two is about to begin. We dreamed 40 years ago that we would be successful in getting our hands on the pot of gold, which we thought was the offshore oil and gas business. And I think we've done it. So I think we've lived the dream, and I think we've got our hands in the pot of gold. And I think an awful lot of us have done awfully well and had an awful lot of fun, awful lot of disappointment, awful lot of bad memories. But we have done it. We've lived the dream, we've got the dream, and over to you, children.